Hey, what's up guys? Very excited to announce that Jack Tyler of the Boston Sax Shop and myself are now launching what we're calling the Nexus Premier, which is going to be an artist model saxophone, which is actually going to be launching under $3,000 at $2,979. As you can see, this horn comes in a beautiful dark cognac lacquer, and by request from many of you, we've also added a high F sharp key to this horn. We're essentially using much of what we found to be so successful in our designs of the Nexus Select and the Nexus One, and we've just made a bit darker of a horn with this Nexus Premier model. So when Jack and I started Nexus, we had a very simple, clear vision. We wanted to see if we could make artist model horns at the same quality as major brands like Selmer and Yamaha. But we wanted to do two things with the Nexus horns. One, we wanted to cut down the weight. So with the Nexus Select and Nexus One, we're actually able to make the lightest horns on market to our knowledge. So as you guys know, a lot of new horns tend to be excessively heavy. We found ways that we were able to cut down the weight for the Nexus Select and Nexus One, and we actually brought it down to the weight of a Selmer Mark VI, which, you know, if you think of it, why should new horns be so heavy when they already got it right with the vintage horns like the Mark VI that were so light? And the other thing we wanted to do with Nexus horns was we wanted to make them more affordable, which we are able to do because of various reasons. One, Jack and I are the two sole owners of Nexus saxophones, which means that instead of when you buy a Yamaha or a Selmer horn, instead of buying from owners that include all sorts of investors and shareholders and fancy things like that and a large group of people who need to make their profits, you're actually just supporting a small saxophone business. Jack and I take tremendous pride in the amount of quality control that we're able to do with these Nexus horns because we're making small batches. Literally every saxophone is set up individually at the Boston Sax Shop, and many of the horns I actually play test myself. I've now played about 100 Nexus saxophones before they go out the door to you, the owner, to make sure they feel right. And super important, also, you want to play test the horn before you totally commit. So we do have a 7-day return policy. So after you get the horn, it ships to your door and you can make sure that you really love it before you hold on to it. And that shipment process is also a big part of why we're able to cut the cost down on this. By dealing direct to you, we're cutting out the middleman, and we're able to keep the cost even more affordable because of that. All right, so today I really just wanted to show you a little preview of this horn and talk about the specs a little bit. So we'll start by, I'll just show you a few samples of me playing in various styles. And after that, we'll break down the different specifications of the build of this horn. We're really proud about how we designed this. So looking forward to telling you guys about that in a minute here. right, guys, hope you enjoyed those recordings. So let's talk about the build of this horn. So again, the Nexus Premier comes in a dark Cognac lacquer. It has a high F sharp key. We're using nickel-plated brass resonators on this, ultra suede regulation material, Italian leather pads. My father-in-law is Italian, so it's actually very important that I have his approval on these saxophones. Jack designed these horns with a meticulous balance of natural and synthetic cork throughout the horn. So he was very, again, meticulous about making sure that the design of this allows the horn to be stable over time. So unlike, for instance, a beginner horn, which will probably total itself in a few months, which means essentially you're going to have to spend the same amount that you spent on the horn in order to just get it fixed and playable again. With the Nexus horns, we're making sure that we build these things in a way that they'll last. Also, of course, it helps that we're setting them all up at Boston Sax Shop. We're using premium blued steel springs. These things hold up super well. We also set up each horn with a very light key action. The goal is to make it feel like it's broken in right out of the case. You don't want to get the saxophone shipped to you and get it out of the case and feel like you've got to do a lot of work just to make it feel nice and broken in. So Jack's really careful about that process with every horn he sets up. So again, as I mentioned, each Nexus Premier saxophone is individually set up at Boston Sax Shop. This horn is designed in the USA. As you know, Jack and I put a lot of time into the design of this. I remember going back and forth between New York and Boston more times than I could keep track of during this process when we were designing the horns. And finally, all these saxophones are manufactured by a small group of saxophonists that we work with in Taiwan. Last year, I was fortunate enough to tour through Taiwan and I got to meet the saxophonists that we're working with here. The manufacturers are a family-run business, some of the nicest people that I've ever gotten to work with. And the qualities and standards of these facilities are very high. And it was very important to Jack and myself that we did the manufacturing process right, as these days I find with the saxophone companies, even the major saxophone companies out there, the quality control is not always as high as you would hope. So again, we're super proud of this new Nexus Premier horn. And most importantly, we're very happy with the quality of the saxophone that we were able to make for a price that is just, I think, unbeatable in today's market.